America, we are back, baby. Welcome to another episode of America Unfiltered with James Pascalides. We got a great show for you tonight, everyone. Please remember to like, follow, smash the subscribe button, leave a comment if you have any questions. But like I said, we do have a great show for you tonight. We have a lot of different topics to talk about. I want to talk about the Charlie Kirk and Tucker Carlson interview. Tucker Carlson has had a lot of good recent interviews. He is interviewing Charlie Kirk recently in this last week. They talk about almost everything besides the Epstein files, which I thought was very interesting because it seems like Charlie Kirk is trying to steer clear of taking a definitive stance on the Epstein files when it comes to Donald Trump. He has made it clear he wants them to be released, but he has not spoken out against Trump or almost anybody inside the Trump cabinet besides Pam Bondi about these files. He even goes over time and time again saying he still has trust in Cash, Dan, and all of these people surrounding Donald Trump. So it's not crazy to think that Charlie Kirk did not talk about the Epstein files in this, but it is slightly suspicious, and it leaves us curious to where Charlie Kirk actually stands on this issue, if he wants full transparency or if he does want to protect Donald Trump. They talked about a lot of other issues in the podcast. We'll talk about them today, but they talked about American nationalism, it seems. They like to water it down to calling it just being a conservative, but what the Republican Party has become over the last 30 years is so far from what American nationalism truly is, and they talk about that a lot in this podcast. So we'll go over that stuff. We'll go over Trump speaking out against Thomas Massey. We'll talk about Ghislaine, statements from her, statements from Pam Bondi, and statements from Ghislaine's family. We'll talk about Congress getting shut down, stopping the vote on the Epstein files, continuing the cover-up that we've been seeing for the last few weeks. We'll also talk about some other just more on-the-fringe topics, but we will talk about studies that liberals are conducting where they think conservatism is dead, and I'm going to tell them why they're wrong. We are going to talk about the WNBA asking for more, or the WNBA players asking for more money. And we're not going to talk about this too much today, but I do want to give prayers to Ozzy Osbourne's family, as Ozzy Osbourne has passed today at the age of 76. Ozzy Osbourne was a rock and roll legend in America and throughout the entire world, and I want everybody to just at some point today listen to one of his songs, listen to some by Black Sabbath. I love War Pigs personally, but take just a few minutes today, listen to one of his songs, and just cherish his legacy. I do want to get into our topics today because, like I said, we do have a great show for you tonight, folks. But once again, please remember to like, smash the follow, and subscribe button. But let's get right into our topics today. To talk about the interview between Tucker Carlson and Charlie Kirk, it was a about 2-hour-long interview. I urge almost everybody here to go watch that interview if you have not already. But in the interview, they talk about corruption, they talk about the economy, and they don't talk about GDP and all the usual buzzwords, but they talk about the actual economy, the fact that people cannot afford houses. They talk about credit card debt. Charlie Kirk talks about student loan debt. He talks about buy now, pay later debt, which is on the rise. People don't talk about buy now, pay later debt because until just last week or a couple weeks ago, it wasn't even registered with federal credit bureaus. But buy now, pay later debt is far exceeding other debts, especially among younger generations. And this is fairly unchecked, unregulated debt. Most of the companies who operate these loan services essentially are not operating within the United States, and they are giving loans to children to pay for almost anything. In the podcast today, they specifically talked about the example of DoorDash and how on DoorDash you can split a meal that you pay for between 4 different payments, or you could even split it up to like 12 payments over a year. To think that there are some people who are ordering pizzas who would then like pay for that pizza, like $2, $3, whatever it is a month for a year, that is ridiculous. We are creating debt slaves. We are creating interest slaves. We are essentially creating a system where people are going to get so used to these reoccurring payments. They are going to get so far into debt that they're not going to be able to get out of it. They are going to be trapped in this. They are creating this essential hostile environment are for children. These buy now, pay later apps are centered for children, on all the children's shopping apps, on all the children's apps, on DoorDash, on things like that. And I'm not even saying like little kids, but people in college, people in high school, etc. People who need to be more financially responsible, but right now are being less financially responsible. And the economy problems aren't just on people being financially irresponsible. There's also there's a mass amount of issues that are causing this. Charlie Kirk and Tucker Carlson talked about these topics, but they talked about immigration impacting this. They talked about how big companies like BlackRock and asset managers buying all the single-family homes, how that's impacting this. They also talked about how just the creation of unnecessary jobs and departments are causing things like this. We are going to break down each issue, but I want to start with immigration. We talk about this on the show a lot, and it was nice to see Charlie Kirk and Tucker Carlson talking about this. We see Charlie Kirk sometimes talk about it. Tucker is newer to this stuff, it seems. But right now, they are trying to replace the American worker. There are big corporations all around the United States that are firing American laborers and importing HB1 visas. And the reason you don't see this in the news on either side of the aisle is because they are reporting that there's a boost in the economy, that job numbers are going up, when in reality, it is true that you could say that job numbers are going up, but they are going up among HB1 visa owners. They're not going up among American-born citizens. There is actually a steep decline in jobs with American-born citizens over the last few years. This is a problem that needs to be fixed. People who are born in this country need to be prioritized in this country. It is the role of our government to prioritize the citizens of this nation before they prioritize anyone else. And the fact that they're giving out work visas when we have people in America who can't get jobs because of it and are getting laid off because of it is leading to the decline in the economy and leading to a younger generation who is more upset. We're going to talk about this reoccurring theme a lot, but Charlie Kirk and Tucker Carlson throughout the entire podcast kept hinting at revolution, and they kept saying we do not want revolution to happen, but they understand that the people who are going to revolt if there was ever a revolution are the young people. It's not going to be 60-year-olds. It's not even going to be 50 and 40-year-olds. It is going to be your 20-year-olds, it's going to be 18-year-olds, the people we draft to war. And we draft those people to war for a reason, because you have, an insane amount of energy, testosterone, things like that at 18 years old. And when you deprive young men of the ability to build families, have homes, you deprive them of the ability to live the American dream, essentially, you are forcing their hand. And repeatedly, they kept talking about that. And repeatedly, they kept bringing it back to, if you just keep importing people into this country and you refuse to accept the consequences of you're replacing American jobs, you're going to have Americans, young Americans specifically, who will be pissed off and eventually revolt. So that is going to be one of the main reoccurring themes of the podcast, was that people will eventually revolt, something I talk about on the show a lot, but they are, finally starting to catch up. They talked about a lot of different reasons that, kind of like I said, that the economy is going down. The immigration one specific, they talked about the housing as well, like we said. If we do not stop asset managers from purchasing all the single-family homes, the prices will only go up, the market will be slimmer and slimmer, and as they keep importing more people, the ability for Americans to buy homes and achieve these things will be slimmer and slimmer. Boomers are also not helping with this by holding the majority of wealth and holding the homes in this country, not providing for future generations. They talked about this as well on the episode, that the purpose of, being a human, being a person, it's not to take vacations and do all of these things. And while those things are nice, when you have every other generation under you struggling and you're holding all the wealth, it is extremely selfish. You are hurting the country. You are hurting America. You're hurting civilization. You are leading to the decline of this society, because that is not the way that previous generations have always lived. People have never been as selfish as the boomers are being with money and with houses and with things like that. And it's not saying give us your houses, give us your money. It's saying don't hold on to all the houses. It's saying you have the ability to sell some of the houses, because you are going to die soon. And that's not me trying to be a dick. That is me just trying to say you are older. People are 20 years old, people are 25 years old, people are 35 years old paying rent still with kids who are not able to afford homes because you make that impossible and you want to overprice the housing market. These are leading to the decline in society. All these things are leading to the decline in American society, the American economy, and it's, again, coming back to, if these things aren't fixed, we're going to have a younger generation who will inevitably revolt. You cannot stop them from revolting if you deprive them of everything that every American generation before them has had. That is just common knowledge. And for some reason, among the older generation and among our government, that just does not seem to translate. It does not seem to make sense. The boomers seem to run this country, and obviously because they fund most of the politicians. It's not 20-year-olds or 30-year-olds funding most of the politicians. It is, you have your billionaires and people like that, but then you also do have just your rich donors to each political party. They also talked about another thing on this, which a lot of people say this is a controversial topic, but I don't believe it to be controversial because it is happening right in front of our eyes. They also talked about it on the Far Right Jubilee episode too, but they talked about great replacement and the great replacement theory of what's happening within the United States, that there is a secret plan by higher ups, either within the government or the deep state, to essentially remove and replace white people from the United States. Remove and replace the original born Americans from the United States. They want to change the demographic for a few different reasons. They want to push socialist policies. They want to change the entire voter base, and that is, to push the socialist policies, you would need to change the entire voter base, because people who are born in America, besides some of the younger generation, people who are less educated on the subject, generally do not like socialism. They understand the negative impacts of socialism and how it inevitably leads to tyranny and death almost every single time. We have talked about this on the show briefly, but I think it is about only 27% of all immigrants, illegal and legal immigrants who come into the United States, who support upholding the Constitution. That means the vast majority of these people want to come into our country and change our country, change our laws. They don't want it to be America. They want it to be the countries they fled from. If they want it to be like the countries they fled from, they should just stay in the countries they fled from and fix them, not try and change America into something it's not. Because America is the greatest country to ever exist, and it will fall from that if we continue to import the entire third world. They are right now trying to, like I said, replace what was America, replace American citizens, replace the entire demographic so they can change the voter base, so they can move it to a more socialist society. They want to take guns away. They want to put more regulations and surveillance on people. They want to take all your rights to free speech and privacy away as well. This is what will inevitably happen if we allow these things to happen, if we allow socialism to happen in the United States. America is not a socialist society. And again, I speak out against parts of capitalism as well. I'm not for the free market, essentially, when it comes to manufacturing overseas and things like that. But it does not mean I am a socialist. I am very far from socialism. I do not think that socialism is effective. And like I said, it leads to the death of millions. And it has led to the death of millions throughout history. I think the Great Replacement is real. People who deny it, they like to just call you racist. I'm sure that I will get that for saying this right now, even though Tucker Carlson, Charlie Kirk, Matt Walsh, Ben Shapiro, who, fuck that guy, but everyone talks about this in conservative media, and every one of them gets called racist for some reason, even though it is true. It is happening. It is happening right in front of our eyes. And when these people come in our country, we, for years, especially under Biden, Obama, more liberal presidents, we have had presidents who give these people, immigrants, legal and illegal, things for free upon coming into the country. We saw people in New York City in 5-star hotels. We saw people getting EBT. They get free health care, etc., things like that. So if they come in the country and they receive these things, why wouldn't they continue to vote for more socialist policies? So why would they want to vote against those things? Why? Like, they came here so they could get those things because they know that our government is corrupt enough to give them. We need to stop incentivizing that as a whole. We need to shut down the legal immigration process, completely close off the border for the illegal immigration process. We need to deport at a minimum 10 million people during Trump's term. I don't think we're going to get to those numbers because of where we're at currently. Charlie Kirk made the point that we need to have 10 self-deportations for every forced deportation we have. We're slightly short of that number, but we could reach it. But I want to see 10 million deportations out of you, Donald Trump. You are going to lose the midterms already because of these Epstein things. We have 2 years realistically to get any more of your agenda pushed through, a year and a half. If you don't get any more of your agenda pushed through on immigration and all these things, we're not going to get shit done for the next 6 years. So let's start getting things done. And you have been busy in the first 6 months. I will give you that, even though you have not been transparent, like you said. You have been good about signing executive orders. Although I disagree with a lot of parts of the One Big Beautiful bill, it did help with immigration. It essentially made it one of the most armed military units in the entire world. I respect ICE agents. I think ICE agents are federal agents doing their jobs who need to be able to continue to do their jobs and keep this nation safe. We need to deport all illegal immigrants out of this country. We need to stop letting legal immigrants into this country and get back to American nationalism. Get back to what this country was founded on. Charlie Kirk and Tucker Carlson talk about this for about 2 hours. They talk about how the younger generation is feeling it the most, how the younger generation is the most pissed off generation in history, that they are the most oppressed. They have more anxiety than any other generation. They're more suicidal. By every metric, our lives are worse off than our grandparents, parents, etc. And for the first time in American history, that's happening. We need to put an end to that. We need to make life better for our kids, for our grandkids, for future generations, because that is the point of being alive. The point is to provide for future generations. And even if you personally yourself don't see yourself having kids, having a family, it doesn't mean you can't still provide for future generations. It doesn't mean that you still can't provide for American society and help American society in some way. This is one of the best interviews I have seen by Tucker Carlson recently, outside of some of the Epstein stuff. But I urge, like I said, everyone to go watch this. I think it is extremely important that we push back to American nationalism and what our founders originally intended for this country. I do want to transition a little bit. Like I said, they didn't talk about Epstein in this interview, which I thought was a little bit suspicious. We can kind of assume why, because of Charlie Kirk's donors with Israel. But I do want to transition to Epstein a little bit. So Pam Bondi and Donald Trump obviously have been extremely pressured since the burial of this information. Since the burial of this information, we have seen Donald Trump's approval rating shoot down. We have seen people on social media outraged, even on Donald Trump's own social media platform, Truth Social. He's getting ratioed. So it's obviously an extremely stressful situation for the president. He does not know how to handle this. It's very obvious that they're panicking and they're trying to flood the media with other narratives like the Obama thing, like the MLK files. They even, he made a big deal about the Redskins having to change their name back, which I agree with that. But again, it's just flooding the media with a bunch of extra bullshit. That does not matter. What matters right now, realistically, and one of the most important things, is the Epstein files, the Epstein information, the politicians, the billionaires, the academia, Hollywood elites in the United States who were molesting children in a Mossad-run operation. So Pam Bondi and Donald Trump, feeling this pressure, are now saying that they will be reaching out to Ghislaine to see if Ghislaine is willing to rat on anybody, if Ghislaine is willing to tell about any of the other co-conspirators. This is obviously a ploy. In my opinion, they are trying to get Ghislaine to turn on Democrats while they're either going to pardon or kill her. I have talked about this before, but Ghislaine has said that she is not suicidal. Ghislaine's family today specifically tweeted out that she is not suicidal and that they are scared for her life now, that they are asking her to potentially testify, and they are going to potentially subpoena her to testify. But in my opinion, this most likely is a move by the Trump administration to make a back-end deal with Ghislaine, who Trump was very good friends with, to bury Democrats while clearing Trump's name, whether the information is true or not. And then, like any other conspiracy, she will either get the deal of a century and walk and never be seen in the media again, or she will be hanging in her cell, dying from a heart attack, dying from choking in the chow hall. Whatever it is, something is going to happen very soon, very big. We are either going to see Ghislaine testify, and like I said, you can't take it all as honest, or we are going to see her die. Those are the two most likely scenarios right now. It will happen most likely within the next couple weeks, hopefully. We want to get information on this Epstein stuff as soon as possible. We have talked about Ro Khanna and Thomas Massey's efforts to make that happen. They have co-sponsored a bill that has been now signed by multiple people on both sides of the aisle. Nancy Pelosi was a holdout, but Nancy Pelosi joined in on that as well. But Speaker Mike Johnson decided to shut down Congress for 6 weeks, going into, I think, the start of September, before they will vote. He wanted to stop the vote from happening, which is obviously extremely suspicious. You can imagine either Trump pushed for this to happen in a back-end deal with him, that GOP donors pushed for this to happen, but someone behind the scenes pushed for this to happen. Either that, or Mike Johnson is guilty of having sex with children. I doubt that is what it is. I do think it is most likely either Peter Thiel, Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, or GOP donors. But the fact that the vote was delayed for another 6 weeks, even with the overwhelming amount of co-sponsors, just goes to show there is a ultimate cover-up happening. When we have this vote come out, it will make one thing clear. Who is covering up for, donors and Trump and people like that, and who is not? We will have many people who obviously vote for the release of the files. But when they force the vote, we will probably see a overwhelming amount of people from the Democratic and Republican side vote for the files to not be released, for the files to be buried forever. I want everyone, and I'm going to report this heavily. I will, when this vote comes out, I will literally live stream it and read each vote out by name. But when that comes out, I want everyone to write down on a piece of paper every person who voted and what side they voted on, or print it out, or whatever you want to do. Because when the midterms come, when future elections come, when lobbying starts taking place come the next election season, I want people to never vote for those people again. I don't want anybody who voted for the burial of the Jeffrey Epstein information to ever hold public office again. I don't think J.D. Vance deserves to hold public office again. I don't think he should be the Republican nomination because of the burial of this information. I do not think that the Republicans will even come close to winning the midterms. But every single person, Democrat, Republican, Independent, whoever, anyone who votes for the burial of this information needs to be called out and needs to be exiled out of our government. They need to be removed as fast as possible come the midterms. They need to be voted out of their spots. They need to be removed from their House, Senate, and congressional seats. And we need to get people in who actually have America First perspectives. People on both sides of the aisle have America First perspectives in, some specific people. And we need to place those people into our government because the Republican and Democratic establishment has become extremely corrupted. While Thomas Massey has been campaigning extremely heavily to get these bills released and to get this bill pushed for a vote before the 6 weeks deadline, which it did not make, Donald Trump has been tweeting against him. Donald Trump took to Truth Social today to call out Thomas Massey specifically. He did not mention Thomas Massey's bill, but what he did say is that Thomas Massey is a clown who cannot garner support for whatever it's worth, and that we need to primary someone against him immediately in the state of Kentucky. Thomas Massey has overwhelming support right now, more support than he has ever had because he is one of the most fiscally conservative people in our government. He consistently refuses to send money to Israel. He is constantly speaking out against the war lobby. He is pro-America in almost every way. I don't love Thomas Massey for every single thing he does. There are things I disagree with, like every politician out there. But I do think Thomas Massey is a very good politician we do have. He is a very valuable House seat right now for the Republicans. And Donald Trump continuously speaking out against him only makes Donald Trump look, A, more guilty, and B, it just makes him look worse. But it makes him look more guilty because Thomas Massey is pushing for the release of the Jeffrey Epstein files. He is even, making jokes that his bill is phase 2 of the Epstein release. And Donald Trump, instead of supporting transparency like he ran on, supporting the release of the Epstein information, is just continuing the burial that he started. Him, Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, Peter Thiel, J.D. Vance, all these people facilitated the burial of the Jeffrey Epstein information. Ghislaine is the only one rotting in jail for the crimes of Jeffrey Epstein, and we need to get more information out. Like I said, we will see Ghislaine testify most likely soon, but most of the things she's going to say is going to be a lie. If she does testify, you can assume a back-end deal was made, specifically if we don't see large GOP donors. We know a lot of the people who most likely are on the list on both sides of the aisle, and if we can't root all those people out, if we can't get real names, answers, and arrests, then all this is for nothing. And it's a similar thing as what I was talking about the other day about Trump with the Russian hoax. It's like, if you throw that out there, it's great, but if you don't make any arrests, it means nothing. It's just another hoax. If we do not get a single arrest out of Ghislaine's testimony, what was the point of it? Why would we even allow her to testify? I want arrests to be made for this Epstein information. I can't believe the thing Ghislaine is going to say, but I'll at least listen to it and I'll hear it out. I want to be able to decipher that for myself. Our government censoring these people and not letting the American people decide for themselves what's true and what's not is corrupt. It's a violation of our rights. We need to be able to decide what's true, not have the government decide what's true for us, not have Trump decide, if Epstein killed himself or if Ghislaine and Epstein were guilty of sex trafficking and who they were sex trafficking to. Because we can assume that Peter Thiel's connection through J.D. Vance, through Carbine 911 and Ehud Barak and Jeffrey Epstein, that is the reason that this is being covered up outside the possibility of Trump possibly being involved in having sex with these children. We obviously all saw the Wall Street Journal article that we talked about with the letter. We know about Trump's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. We also know about the photos of the parties. We know that they worked pageants together, etc. So it is very possible that Donald Trump was involved. It would be extremely sad and heartbreaking to find out that I voted for someone who did that, but I'm glad I'm on the side of it that's speaking out against it now. I do not want to be on the side of covering up pedophilia, and as long as Donald Trump, Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, and all the people in the Trump administration are doing that, they will not have my support or the support of a lot of Americans. We talked about the surveys that were being done earlier, but I want to talk about the surveys that liberals are parading, around on social media right now and why they're incorrect and wrong about these surveys. The surveys are saying that among 18 to 29-year-olds who Donald Trump far exceeded popularity with, that his approval rating from February was at 55%, and then post-Epstein, burial, it is at 28%. And you have the left parading this information around, saying that conservatism is dead, that Republicans are dead, that people are leaving the right. What they do not realize is that these people are not leaving the right to go be liberals or go be Democrats. These people are way more far right than Donald Trump. They are way more far right than you originally thought. These people, like I said, Democrats thought we just wanted to stop illegal immigration. But no, a lot of us want to stop legal immigration. You have people like Charlie Kirk. You have mainstream media talking about that now, something that years ago we could not have talked about. But we are getting to the point where we need to talk about it or we are going to lose American culture and American values, because what is a country that doesn't have a shared culture or shared value or shared identity? We cannot just be this country that has no identity at all. We need to remain America. We need to remain the demographics we have in America, because, like I said, we cannot push this great replacement that they're trying to push on us, where they want to change the entire demographics to change us to a socialist society. That is not what America is. Our founders would spit at the floor at that idea, and I do too. I do not accept that. But like I said, these people who are now have, this 28% approval rating for Trump, they're parading it around like these people jump ship to the Liberal Party, but no, it is people who are just realizing that maybe they're not conservatives. They are American nationalists. They're American first patriots. They are people who want to put Americans over everything else. They don't want to fund Israel the way that conservatives and the way that Republicans do. They don't want to fund wars. They don't want to support APEC. They don't want to support BlackRock. They don't want to support the cover-up of Epstein. And no, they are not going to the left. They are not changing their values. The majority of these people are Christians. The majority of these people are unwilling to compromise on their values. And like I said, they are just way more far right than you guys originally realized, because everyone painted Donald Trump as this far right lunatic, that Donald Trump was a far right crazy Nazi. Donald Trump was and is a liberal. He always has been. He has pitched himself as a conservative, and he holds America first values, but Donald Trump is extremely liberal. He always has been. It's the reason he was extremely popular in Hollywood with Oprah, with The View, with all these people prior to 2015, when the mass media moguls, the people who run all this behind closed doors, told them, you have to hate Donald Trump now. You have to turn him into this thing that maybe he's not, or maybe he even was, because we're seeing the burial of the Epstein information. It's hard to say that Trump is an angel now or Trump wasn't bad back in the day, because there is a strong possibility that Trump was guilty of these things. But the Liberal Party being so dumb and so confused, thinking that most people are switching sides, that almost 25% or over 25% of Republicans switch from being Republicans to Democrats because of this information, that just shows how lost and delusional the Democratic Party actually is. They don't understand politics. They don't understand our morals. They don't understand what we want for this country. We want American nationalism. We want to take this country back. We want to make this country America again. And when I say make it America again, I mean we're losing that every single day that we keep importing HB1 visas to replace American jobs, that we keep devaluing our dollar, that we keep making it impossible for future generations to not only succeed and thrive, but have a great life, and have a life that's worth living, and have a life that has promise, and that your family can be proud of, and that you can provide for future generations. We should be aspiring for generational wealth. Every generation, we should aspire to leave more money, leave more success, more family, all these things to future generations. But no, we're not going in that direction in America. They're pushing us away from that. They actually want you to kill your babies on the Democratic side. They don't want you to have your babies. They want you to kill them up until the 9th month. They want you to be allowed to murder your child. It is disgusting what the Democrats are pushing in this nation. We need to get back to American nationalism. Like I said, I'm very upset with Charlie Kirk's handling of this Epstein information. He's extremely close with Trump. He has Trump's ear almost any time he wants. He should be pushing Trump to release this information for full transparency. And the fact that he did a 2-hour-long interview with Tucker Carlson, they did not even talk about it, is extremely upsetting, suspicious. And it doesn't mean suspicious in the way of Charlie Kirk being guilty, but why is he facilitating the cover-up? As a evangelical Christian himself, why is he facilitating the cover-up of this outside of, possibly they're wanting to protect Mossad or protect Donald Trump's legacy, but both of them are guilty of sex trafficking minors to Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and other politicians, and they need to be held accountable. So, Charlie Kirk, you're not going to see this, but, if you ever do, please speak to Donald Trump. You have his ear. You are one of the only people who have his ear on this subject. I do want to talk about, like I said, just a couple other random things. We do have the WNBA. They said that, or they didn't say, they all wore shirts the other night, all the exact same shirts that said, "Pay us what you owe us." I love the WNBA too. I'm a huge basketball fan. I love how Caitlin Clark has evolved the game. I love that they are actually getting some more attention now, because I do think they deserve it. I do think the league itself is not that impressive. I do think that your, very good varsity men's basketball team could probably beat your pro women's team, or most of them. But there are people in the WNBA who take exception to that, who are better than some almost entire varsity men's basketball teams, like Caitlin Clark herself, like A'ja Wilson. There are people in the league who do exceed expectations of what WNBA players are usually able to accomplish. But for them to say, pay us what you owe us, is a ridiculous statement. I mean, sure, you can make the argument that maybe they deserve a little bit more money with the explode in popularity over the last few years. But they operate in debt. They operate as a negative to the NBA. The way the WNBA works is not how the NFL or the NBA or the NHL or any of these other major sports leagues work. They are not able to fund themselves. They are not able to stand on their own 2 feet. If they had to fund themselves, they would have been bankrupt decades ago. They are at a loss of about $50 million every single year, and the NBA pays that money. That money is money that could go to NBA players. It could go to improving the league, but instead of doing that, as charity, they take that money and they use it to pay for the WNBA because, like I said, the WNBA does not have money to operate because women do not support other women. And it's not saying that all women don't support women, but if women actually gave a shit about wanting other WNBA players to get paid more, they would watch the WNBA. But I know 0 women who watch the WNBA. I watch more WNBA games in a week than every woman I know combined is watching their entire life. It is ridiculous that women are the ones complaining about this on social media and saying these girls deserve more, but they can't name 5 players. They can't name 4 teams. They can't name 3 cities these teams are in. They can't name a head coach. They can't name a league owner. They can't name the name of the stadium. They can't name shit. So for anyone who has a problem with this, women specifically, if you have a problem with WNBA players not paying more, I urge you to do this. Get on your cable plan, go subscribe to WNBA League Pass, which I know you don't do, but weirdly, every man subscribes to NBA League Pass because guess what? We want to support our favorite teams. We want to watch our favorite teams. And if women actually cared about women making more money, then they would support them because the only way for WNBA players to make more money is for their viewership to keep exploding, is for them to actually generate income. They do not generate any income. Like I said, they operate at a loss. They have to take $50 million at a minimum every single year from the NBA to even survive. But like I said in the beginning, you can make the argument that they do deserve a little bit more money. Your average WNBA player is paid less than a trucker. I mean, they are paid around $50,000 to $80,000 a season on, that some of that's even on the higher end. But like I said, it's hard to justify high salaries when you're losing money, and essentially you're playing a game for a job. You're not sitting in an office all day. You're not risking injury in the same way you are with football. And it's not to say you can't get injured in basketball. We saw Derrick Rose. We saw Kobe Bryant. We've seen extreme, terrible injury scenarios ruin careers. Not to say Kobe's was ever ruined. Kobe's the king. Was the king. R.I.P. But the WNBA has no right to say that they deserve more money, that all the players deserve more money until they can actually produce a product that will generate more money. And it's not to say that the game hasn't improved. Like I have also said, Caitlin Clark has improved the game immensely. And people like to talk about Angel Reese, who I despise personally, but she has improved the game. Aja Wilson has improved the game. There are a lot of young girls, a lot of young talent in the WNBA that has improved the quality of the product. But the majority of new viewers right now are men gambling on it. It is not it's not women and little girls. And yes, there is a big explosion in the viewership from women and girls, but percentage-wise compared to men that's actually just gambling on it, it's slim. And women, if you want WNBA players to be paid more, if you don't want to get called out and be called stupid when you argue that they should be paid more with no facts or evidence why, like I said, subscribe to the WNBA League Pass. It costs about $30 a year. It is so cheap, and you can watch almost every WNBA game. You can become a fan, find your local market team, buy a jersey. I own 2 WNBA jerseys. Like I said, I'm a guy. I don't know any women who have even watched a WNBA game, let alone buy a jersey from one of the players. But no, I think we should be supporting these players. I'm a huge advocate to get any gender into sports, men and women. I think it's extremely important to support women's sports, but I don't think we should be just throwing money at people who aren't generating money. If people are losing money, Why would we give them money? It's similar to my, foreign aid policy, where it's like, I don't want to give money to countries who are doing nothing to help the United States. I want all our money to be spent where it should be, spend best, with Americans. And yes, I'm not saying that we should stop funding the WNBA out of the NBA, but what I am saying is shut up and dribble. Same as what we told LeBron back in the day. Shut up and dribble. Don't ask for more money until you produce a product that deserves more money. And it's not to say you girls aren't doing a good job and picking it up on the court there and, playing your hearts out, but you need to actually convince women to watch you if you want to succeed. You need to convince millions of women around this country to subscribe to, the WNBA League Pass and to watch your games, to go to your games, to travel to them, to support you, wear your jerseys, to tweet at you, to follow you so you can get better brand deals. There's a reason the WNBA, NFL, and all these people are so successful, because we follow them like a cult. Eagles fan, I'm an Eagles fans. Eagles fans specifically, we are a cult following. We live and die by this. Most Philadelphia Eagles fans are blue-collar guys. They hate their lives. They hate their wives. They hate everything about life. And they live every single day to watch the Eagles win or lose on Sunday. And the rest of their week, the mood the rest of the week is determined by what happened that Sunday, the injuries following, the trades, the pickups, everything in between. They live, breathe, and die by the Eagles. And again, I love it. It is what makes this country great in a lot of ways. It is beautiful, the love people have for football and the love people have for basketball as well. People are just as big at basketball fans, although it seems to be slightly less. The celebration for the Oklahoma Thunder was one of the most embarrassing celebrations I've ever seen relative to what they used to look like when Kobe was celebrating, Dirk was celebrating, when LeBron had the comeback, or even the Warriors when they were on fire for a few years. It's embarrassing what some of these leagues are turning to, but even during the embarrassing periods, we're still generating billions of dollars. We're generating enough money that we can subsidize the leagues that are asking for raises when they're losing money. Again, I love you, Caitlin Clark. You are killing it out there on the court. You, honestly, Caitlin Clark, I would be up for discussing raising your salary, because you could make the argument that about 70% of the explosion in the viewership is directly tied to Caitlin Clark, and 70% is a low estimate. It's most likely a lot higher. She right now is 80 to 90% of all the jersey sales in the WNBA. Her teammate Sophia Cunningham, I call her Sophia Stunningham, her jersey sold out immediately as well after she defended Caitlin Clark when Caitlin Clark got just laid out in a game, and the league does nothing about it. The league does nothing to protect their star player, legitimately the only player who brings revenue to the league. And like I said, it's not like they're making money. They're not generating profit, but from the money that they do make before it gets there, Caitlin Clark is a majority of that. So you could argue that maybe her salary should go up, and then that could be the example you set and the precedent you set of, you bring this stardom to the WNBA, you bring this power to the WNBA, we will reward you for it. Because what Caitlin Clark is doing for the WNBA is, in theory, not in, accolades and accomplishments, but in PR-wise, it is what LeBron did for the NBA. It is what Kobe did and Michael Jordan did. And again, I'm not equating her basketball skills to them. They would dominate her with one hand and blindfolded, most likely. I think Kobe from beyond the grave might be Caitlin Clark. But she is bringing attention to the league. Every one of her games is sold out. Every away game is still a home game because everyone there is an Indiana Fever fan. So, again, my problem is not that, I don't know, I just don't think they should be asking for more money. Don't ask for more money if you're not generating money. It's that simple. I want you guys to succeed. I pray that you guys do get raises in the next few years, and I pray you're able to stop, producing debt over the next few years and you're able to produce profit. But until you guys produce profit, I have a hard time arguing for anyone outside of Caitlin Clark to receive even a penny raise in their salary. You could probably make a stronger fiscal argument to reduce all their salaries than you could to raise all their salaries if you're going off pure economics and how businesses operate throughout the entire world, but the United States and sports leagues specifically. These were all our topics we had for today. I do want to go over the stuff we talked about. We talked about liberals and conservatives being confused about where everyone stands and how liberals are parading around that conservatives are jumping ship, when in reality, Democrats are just now realizing they weren't jumping ship at all. They're just a lot more far right than they actually thought. These people don't only want mass deportations, they want to stop legal immigration. We want to fix this country and return to American nationalism. We talked about the Tucker Carlson, Charlie Kirk interview. I thought it was very interesting, but very suspicious they didn't talk about the Epstein information. We talked about the great replacement theory. They talked about it, how they want to change the voter demographics in this country to push socialism, how everything they're doing to harm the younger generations is only pushing this country closer to a revolution, and how we do not want that to happen, but it is uncontrollable whether that does happen. If the government refuses to get their act together and refuses to make the situation better for future generations. We talked about Ghislaine and her family saying and specifying that she will not kill herself following Ghislaine most likely getting subpoenaed to testify. Pam Bondi and Donald Trump are reaching out directly to Ghislaine, which you can imagine they're making that back-end deal for her to stay quiet about Republicans or Donald Trump specifically while selling out the Democrats. So if she does make it up there to testify, we know she's lying, and if she gets killed before, we know who did it. But I'd imagine one of the two is going to happen. We almost had the vote for the release of the Epstein files, what Thomas Massey is calling phase 2 of the releasal. But Mike Johnson shut down Congress for 6 weeks, so we would not see the vote. Again, just covering this up even further. We talked about the WNBA, and again, rest in peace to Ozzy Osbourne, the rock and roll legend. Please, I want everyone, like I said, listen to a little bit of his music today and just say a prayer or give a thought out to his family if you're not religious. But it is important when legends like this do pass that, that we respect it, that we show that we cared in some way. Because I believe that he is in heaven looking back at us, or maybe he wanted to be in hell. We heard him say that a lot. But you get my point of just, I want him, wherever he sees this from, to know that we all cared about him, and that there are people in this life and people in this world who, on a sad day would put his songs on, and it would lift their spirits up, lift their moods up. It would let them forget about their problems for a little bit. Everyone can, relate to that regarding music or movies or TV shows or exercise. For some people, he was that person. And for those people, like I said, we should all listen to a song or a few, give a prayer or thought out to the family and to his soul, because he touched all of ours here in America. Rock and roll is America in a lot of ways. I want to check to see if any headlines did pop up while we were filming our show. I've been doing that over the last few weeks. We've got some good stuff out of it. I don't know if we'll have anything. It's been kind of a slow last few news weeks. Outside of the Epstein stuff, we realistically have not got almost anything. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, there is not a ton. Yeah, especially with Congress getting shut down for the next 6 weeks. I'm guessing we're not going to have the most interesting 6 weeks. We are still seeing Obama just walking around, even though he allegedly is guilty of treason, so it's just them flooding the media with bullshit. There is a new video on CNN floating around of a 1993 security camera in a coffee shop of Donald Trump, Jeffrey Epstein, and his 2 children all talking in a cafe. It doesn't seem like there's much more besides that there. That kind of seems like I want to briefly touch on what we talked about yesterday, I guess, for 1 second. The Netanyahu Nelk Boys podcast went extremely viral. They don't show dislikes on YouTube anymore, but they do have Google Chrome add-ons and pieces or extensions that you can add that people can see what the dislikes are. And from what it looks like is the dislikes are about 40 times what the likes are. It is by far one of the most disliked videos. They are getting an insane amount of hate. They are getting ripped on by different people in social media, on YouTube, and I want to tell people why they should not be ripping on them. The idea of having Netanyahu on is terrible and evil, but I understand the idea from not political people who don't know a ton about politics, who like to push the boundaries and be controversial, to want to interview a controversial subject, especially when you understand the relationship of, Steiny, Aaron Steinberg, the co-host of the podcast, whose father has a close relationship with Israel Netanyahu and is one of the richest Jewish lawyers in Florida and in the United States. So that's probably one of the ways they were able to secure this interview outside of Donald Trump saying to Netanyahu specifically, these guys aren't going to push back a lot. You could say whatever you want. But one of the reasons you should not hate is, like I said, they don't know a lot about politics. They just want controversy. And two, they followed it up by having a streaming marathon. The streaming marathon consisted of them having Nick Fuentes on, who is one of the most controversial subjects, especially when it comes to the Israeli topic. They had Myron Gaines as well, who is an outspoken black man, and I think he is a Muslim, but he is an outspoken person like Andrew Tate, who just speaks about men's mental health. He speaks about problems with men and women. He speaks about problems with religion and problems going on in American society. They also had Hassan Piker, who is on the left, an extreme pro-Palestine voice. I actually personally hate Hassan Piker. I remember back in the Adam Calhoun days, not that he's not around anymore. I love Adam Calhoun still. Shout out to his new album. But I remember back in the Adam Calhoun Snapchat days and the grunt style days when he was over there, that Hassan Piker was taking shots at Adam Calhoun over videos he would make about different groups in America. And Adam Calhoun coined the phrase taking a Hassan Piker, which was just taking a shit, which I usually hate jokes about taking shits. But I hated Hassan Piker enough that I accepted it. And for years, we saw people on social media, especially on, the early days of paid Snapchat that Adam Calhoun had, where he had his public story when that was originally a thing, where people would literally send him pictures of them taking shits, saying, I'm taking a Hassan Piker. And millions, hundreds of thousands of these people would send these in, and Adam Calhoun would repost them. So I hate Hassan Piker just for the way he would attack Adam Calhoun for expressing his First Amendment views. I have no problem with people who want to debate people, but he blatantly attacks him for no reason, with almost no basis besides just disagreeing with his views. But you have to give credit to the Nelk Boys for having this streaming marathon after that Netanyahu interview. Netanyahu interview essentially denied all negative claims that the Nelk Boys made. They didn't make a lot of negative claims towards Israel, but they asked about starving children. They asked about aid not being delivered. And Netanyahu continued to push on his PR tour of trying to make Israel the most loved country by the younger generation, when realistically, it is one of the least liked countries by this younger generation. And people love to tie that to anti-Semitism when in no way is it tied to anti-Semitism. There are anti-Semites who exist in the United States, but the reason people dislike Israel right now is because they take $3.8 billion a year from the United States. We are currently the generation who is suffering the worst, and we don't have money to give, and our government refuses to stop giving money to them. We saw 422 people in the government vote to give $500 extra million a year to Israel on top of the $3.8 billion a year we already give them. We need to take that money and pay down our debt with it. The fact that the vote was 422 to 6 that way instead of the other way is repulsive and disgusting to me, and it goes against everything this country was founded on. I imagine the Nelk Boys and the Full Send podcast will have Nick Fuentes on their show within the next few weeks. I hope they would. I would imagine they would either try and get Nick Fuentes, Hassan, or Myron to get on their show. They had them on the kick stream very briefly, but while they were doing the kick stream, you could literally see how scared they were. You could see that they were freaking out inside, that, Kyle and Steiny that they were like, holy shit, what do? We have been building this platform for a decade only to, ruin our reputation in an hour. They essentially had on someone that has committed a mass amount of war crimes. Myron Gaines, I wouldn't even say this specifically. I don't agree with this statement, but on the live stream, even he said, having Netanyahu on is not Myron. Hassan Piker said this, the liberal on the left side. I'm sorry. Hassan Piker said, having Netanyahu on is the equivalent to having a modern day Hitler on. And obviously the statement is slightly overblown when you look at the numbers of war crimes, etc., things like that, and the history behind the Holocaust and things like that. But the idea of them having a war criminal on their podcast and YouTube having no problem with that, but Steve Will Do It, who is one of their co-hosts, is not allowed on YouTube because of promoting gambling, which I generally do not agree with promoting gambling and gambling ads because of the addiction behind it with younger generations. But you have countless conservatives as well who are just banned on YouTube for expressing their views. Sneeko, Nick Fuente specifically. They are not allowed on YouTube because they have expressed their views. So how is it that someone who has committed literal war crimes is allowed on YouTube and is allowed to essentially push propaganda, but people who have not committed any crimes and people who the social media companies just disagree with their speech, why are they not allowed on? It seems very backwards. And I do understand the idea of, you need to allow political figures to have a voice, whether they're war criminals or not. Like, as someone who is, I'm not a journalist per se, but I'm doing things journalists do. If I had the opportunity, and this was brought up by Hassan as well, if you had the opportunity to interview like Osama bin Laden, would you take it? Like, obviously, yes. And while you're not going to give him a softball interview, you're not going to, kiss his ass during it. You would take an interview with almost any world leader, any, notorious polarizing figure that you could get. People would do interviews with Hitler. They would do interviews with Mussolini. They would do interviews with Franco. They would do interviews with Mao Zedong. They would do interviews with all historical figures of all points in time, no matter what crimes or atrocities they did commit, because you are going to get a different perspective, because you are going to hear different angles. And whether they're lies or not, getting back to the point we repeat constantly on this show, you need to let the people decipher that for themselves. You can't just hide things from the people because you're government and because people like that want to censor it and want to say it's lies. While I do think we do need to allow Netanyahu to be able to voice his opinion on social media and on YouTube and on things like that, I think we also need to restore the free speech of all the people who were stripped of it. All the people who had YouTube accounts banned, all the people who are not allowed to create new accounts, not allowed to be featured in videos, can't get verified on X, can only post on Rumble. All these people need to be reinstituted back into the social media culture and back into American culture. We need to give these people their voices back the same way we are allowing war criminals to speak, the same way we are allowing Tucker Carlson and Charlie Kirk to speak about these topics. Why wouldn't we allow Nick Fuentes to speak about them? Just because you might disagree with some of his messaging and his language doesn't mean he doesn't have a voice and isn't an American. And I don't agree with every single thing he says. I agree with a lot of it, and he is extremely smart geopolitically. But limiting his free speech is only hurting, the other side. It worked for a while. They were able to limit his voice for so long. But over time, when people see that someone's being censored, it makes people want to tune in. People who never would have tuned in are now following him like a cult because they understand that the government is a corrupt organization. Democrats and Republicans work together as a corrupted system to censor people they do not agree with, keep us distracted on the 15% of issues that we don't agree with, while we all realistically agree with 85% of the issues. We need to get back to American nationalism. We need to stop censorship. We need to get back to a place in this country that makes sense. We are not there right now. We are so lost in this society. We right now are allowing people to spread misinformation on some of the largest platforms. And if it wasn't for overwhelming public pressure, we would have gotten we would have gotten nothing in return. But because of the overwhelming pressure in the comment section, on the dislike button, people tweeting out to him and their DMs exploding about the, dislike of Netanyahu, the dislike of the Israel lobby and the lies they tell us, and the fact that, he just was extremely corrupt and dishonest in the interview. They were able to redeem themselves by bringing Nick on and showing the other side. If they didn't do that, it really could have been the destruction of Nelk. But I got a little lost in saying all this, but I do think that it was not only important for the future success of Nelk, but for the future success of free speech that they did that. I think them giving Nick Fuentes a voice, the Nelk boys, who have almost 10 million subscribers, and they have a cult-like following as well, them giving a voice to one of the smartest geopolitical and most knowledgeable geopolitical voices in the industry, Nick Fuentes, is changing for the American nationalist movement. It is revolutionizing it. It is pushing it forward, and it is showing other creators that they can push the boundaries as well, that they can push the boundaries of what is socially acceptable the same way the Nelk boys did, the same way Alex Jones does, the same way Myron does, the same way the Whatever podcast does, the same way Nick Fuentes does, same way Matt Walsh and even Charlie Kirk sometimes do. They like to push the envelope every now and then, even though they do stay in line with their donors. I'm James Pascalides. This has been episode 95 of America Unfiltered. I hope you guys do have a blessed day. I will see you guys tomorrow. And please remember, Ghislaine will not kill herself. Thank you.